Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Tuesday, June 16th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. I've got a great show lined up for you today. You'll enjoy all of it, so please make sure you stick with me for the full hour. I don't want to waste any time today. I want to get right down to brass tacks with the recent flood of news articles out today, largely pertaining to the meltdown from the neocon warhawks who dread any type of peace, negotiation, or communion with the Iranian government, and of course not wiping Iran off the face of the earth. They're very troubled by this. I mean, these people are sick in the head, folks. They love war, and they don't have America's best interest at heart, at least not in my own opinion. These are the people who sold you this war right at the very beginning, either that being in the mainstream media, radio, social media, all pretending to be America first, telling you how great it was, how brilliant President Trump was. Where are they now, by the way? Is it still brilliant, by the way? Was it still a great idea? Look at the world economy right now. I don't think many people would agree with you on that. But that's how it was sold to you on day one. Brilliant, couldn't be better. Trump's a genius. 5D chess. The Iranians are begging us. They will beg us. We'll get everything we want. And look where we are today. But now they're out there calling President Trump out for his betrayal of Israel. Can you believe this nonsense? Demanding Vice President Vance resign because he's planning to appear on Megyn Kelly's show? Really? No, they don't like freedom of speech so much. No. Especially when it's somebody they don't like. Now, they are imploding onto themselves because Trump's current stance right now is that he, not Israel, will determine the end of this war. Of course, this can all change. Things can fall apart. We've seen this time and time again, have we not? We've been told we're close to a deal, things are happening, and all of a sudden they fall right apart. And we know it's been leaked by both sides, of course. Certain provisions in this memorandum of understanding, if you will. But by the way, this isn't even a peace deal. It's not even a ceasefire. This is to get us to that point. So the bottom can fall out at any moment, folks. Let's just be very much aware of all that as we move forward right now. And we won't really know until after it's probably signed. In other words, it's just kind of like the Affordable Care Act. Remember that? We have to pass it so you can see what's in it. All nonsense, by the way. But the pro-Israel lobby now masquerading as American patriots want this all out there in the open, so there'll be lots of pushback from the so-called MAGA crowd. And by the way, we all know President Trump hates when it seems that his base is upset with him. He wants to be liked. Who doesn't want to be liked? Well, personally, I don't give a damn if I'm liked or not. My focus is to tell you the truth. I tell it to you how it is. And that's why you listen to my show. He wants all that adulation and the fawning over him every moment. Okay, fine. Some people are like that. I can't do anything about that. So I hope he sticks to his guns here. I hope he will move forward with stopping this conflict in any way possible that he can. And we have to be, again, cognizant that the Iranians have won this conflict militarily. They control the Strait of Hormuz. That's not changing. Trump understands that it's not changing. And that's why we're in the position we're in right now. Through the brilliance, again, of Netanyahu, the people in the media telling him this is a great idea, his administration, who I'm told in the very beginning told him this is a terrible idea. And of course he went with it, and then all of a sudden they love it so much. So he's in this echo chamber, this milieu of, again, this is a great war. You'll be recognized as a great wartime president and all this other nonsense. It's not bringing us any closer to peace, though. But I think he's finally figured it out that he cannot win this militarily. It's just not going to work. The economy is falling out from under us. We are seeing very much high inflation right now, 4.2% in the month of May. God knows what June will bring. We are seeing the price of oil drop because of the announcement of this memorandum of understanding. So that's at least something positive we can look at. But right now, tensions have never been higher between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. We've never seen anything like this before between the two of them. And Israel's very upset about the way Trump is handling this right now. And again, and by the way, if any of these points that I've read to you yesterday, of these 14 points that the Iranian government has released, now again, it could be right, it could be wrong, some could be on there, some could not. But this just looks like a list of, okay, here's our memorandum of understanding. Number 1, permanent and immediate cessation of war on all fronts, including Lebanon. This is what the Iranians have been saying all along. Most of this stuff is, by the way, is what they've been saying all along. So I tend to believe this, and I tend to believe the American side that's saying Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Now, only time will tell. But what is Israel going to do? Is Israel going to capitulate in Lebanon? Give up their dream of greater Israel? At the start of all this, the start of this war, Netanyahu said that he had been dreaming of this, of course, referring to this war with Iran by the United States, for 40 years. He said this right in the open. So are we going to be shocked if he says, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do whatever I can? By the way, he's come out recently saying he'll do whatever he needs to defend Israel from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from anyone that's threatening the national security of Israel. Okay. But are you going to leave right now? Are you going to leave southern Lebanon right now? Yes or no? So that's going to be a big part of this so-called understanding. And the Iranians want the United States to understand that we don't have a deal if Israel is not tamed in. If Israel's going to continue running roughshod over southern Lebanon, we don't have a deal. And you will continue to be in this conflict. Now, Trump can shut this down right away. He can simply tell Netanyahu, very nicely, if you continue to go on with this, continue to fight, this is going to be on your own terms. We will not aid and abet you. We will not sell you arms. We will not give you arms. We will not give you money. No, give you intelligence. It's over. If you stymie this deal that we have with the Iranians. Now, Trump can do that. Will he? Probably not. But he can do that. He does have some leverage here. Now, again, I don't believe he would do that. I think a lot of what we're seeing back and forth, why did Bibi have to Blinken do this attack and all this other nonsense? I'm really pissed at him. To me, folks, that's WWE. It's smoke and mirrors. I don't buy it for a second. Now, does that mean he didn't have a stern talk with him? Sure, he could have. But again, I doubt that the back and forth is going around like that. I really don't believe that, to be honest with you. But Trump is now claiming his victory. He's talking about how he's, again, cutting off the Islamic Republic's pathway to a nuclear weapon, which, by the way, they never have been working towards a nuclear weapon. So this is good. I mean, I was really getting worried that we were pushing them to getting a nuclear weapon. By the way, that's still likely to be on the table should this all fall apart. And I think this is the last hurrah with the Iranians. If they can't get anything working with the United States after all of this, I do believe they'll say to themselves, listen, we've tried, 3 times now to work with the U.S. Last June, 2025, earlier this year. They destroyed our currency. They've killed our negotiators. They've killed our nuclear scientists. They've killed our people. Twice during negotiations. And by the way, we're still now speaking with them directly, I believe, right now. Pakistan is obviously the main mediator between the two, but we're communicating in that realm. They're going to say to themselves, there's nothing to this. There's no reason to speak with the United States because, again, they can't be trusted. And they certainly don't trust Israel, again, who the United States backs. And again, without the United States, Israel wouldn't have a functioning military. Certainly not to the degree they have with us. It just wouldn't be that way. By the way, they wouldn't have a lot of things, too, without the U.S. taxpayer dollar. Anyways, but Trump is happy about this. He likes how the markets are reacting to what's going on. We're seeing the price of oil per barrel beginning to drop, which, again, I said is a great thing, of course. We're not seeing the prices at the pump yet. What we're seeing right now is a market reacting. Everyone thinks on Wall Street, for some strange reason, that the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened right away this Friday. And everything will be fantastic. Everything will just keep flowing. Flow, flow, flow. Forget about the last 3 months, 90% of the traffic coming from the Strait of Hormuz has simply not existed. That's just, nothing's moving. And that's going to take months, years to regain that type of traffic to resume to where it was prior to February 28th. That's just the truth of the matter. Then you're also looking at fixing facilities, refineries, ports, all these other things that are very crucial to get the cargo to get where it needs to go. You have a lot of these refineries that time and time again are either offline or they're damaged right now. And I'm told that the Qatari liquefied natural gas facility that refines has been hit. It's been damaged. It's going to take a year for them to get back up and running. So you've got still big problems that are happening, even if the Strait of Hormuz does open up this Friday. So we've got to be, again, looking at the reality of the situation right now. Is everything just going to be totally fine this Friday if this deal even goes forth? Then again, the answer is no. It's going to take time. The ships that would be sailing out right now, porting in Los Angeles, Florida, wherever it may go, the Gulf of America, to refineries or on the eastern seaboard, they're not showing up because there's no traffic coming out to the United States. And a little bit of traffic that does leave usually goes to places like China or goes to India, places like that. BRICS members, if you will. But now we've got Netanyahu is facing a major backlash inside of Israel. I think that's the part about all this that's, again, very, very interesting to me. You got critics across both the political spectrum, all across the country now, who are not happy with this deal. They're saying the deal's too weak, and it's weak in reining in the threats from Iran. Well, no kidding. The Iranians have won this. There's nothing too real in here. I mean, what are you going to do? The Iranians don't have a nuclear weapon. Now, you can get them to write on paper, we're not going to build a nuclear bomb. We already had that from the JCPOA. Want them to write that again for you? But they're getting worried about the ballistic missile capability by the Iranians, and rightfully so. I mean, Iran has been really putting it to them. They've been using I'll use a Trump vernacular, they've been pounding them pretty good. Look at this here. Support for terrorist proxies. Again, these proxies are military resistance groups that only exist because of Israel and their aggression in the region. That's the only reason why Hamas exists. That's the only reason why Hezbollah exists. And if Israel had not, again, invaded in 1978, taken that territory, Hezbollah wouldn't even exist today. So we got to call it as we see it, folks. This is why these groups exist. We can look at things like clean break, mowing the lawn. We can look at the actions of Israel taking Palestinians away from their homes with no charge and putting them in prison. These people are prisoners in Israel. They're not hostages. They are simply prisoners. There is no exchange to be had. And that's why when the whole negotiation took place to the end of 2025, and Trump finally got the remaining hostages home, which we all were very happy about. They didn't show you any of the Palestinian hostages, though. The 12,000 that are simply, they're not even hostages, they're just simply prisoners. They've been held against their own will. Again, mostly without any charge to them. Who now the Israeli government is so happy to tell you that they're going to have them in front of a military court. They don't get to have any real idea of what the evidence is against them, if there is any. They have the right to, again, a lawyer or what have you, or any type of way to stop this. And they're championing, and by the way, you saw this with Ben-Gvir, hanging them now, finding them guilty in their own court of law, a military court, and then simply killing them. We know that some of these prisoners have been raped, and they've been absolutely fine with it. And I don't tell you this to say that everyone in Israel is about this. There are some people that are, though. Let me tell you that. But when you have over 80% of the people in Israel championing this war with Iran or, again, invading Lebanon, there's a problem with that, folks. There's an absolute problem with that. And, again, I can't change the sentiments inside of Israel. Again, you can believe whatever you want to believe. But simply, I think this is no good for them. Because the world sees what's going on. The world sees what's going on in Gaza. You can't unsee that. You cannot look at that and say, yeah, you know what, this is self-defense. Even Trump has come out now saying, listen, you're going after Hezbollah. You're bombing these residential areas, an entire building to so-called get one person. Not everyone in that building is Hezbollah. And I'm thinking to myself, well, President Trump, where have you been in Gaza? Where have you been since this took place? You're sitting on a so-called board of peace with the guy who's bombed 85% of Gaza into the ground, into ruins, who is now bombing in Beirut suburbs, that's killed 3,600 people and counting? And we have nothing to say about this. And by the way, it's with all of our munitions. I'll just let you ponder that to yourself. Yeah, we always have money for war, don't we, folks? But Netanyahu has simply defined Trump right now, and of course we're seeing demands to halt the retaliation, attacks against Hezbollah from President Trump. Again, I think if Netanyahu decides to continue on with this, if he decides to, for example, if let's say he tries to invade or attack or destroy homes again, I think you'll see Iran respond to this, and I think it will completely destroy these negotiations. I think Netanyahu understands this. Now, the press is coming out saying the tensions are real, but the relationship is strong. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of nonsense. Again, I don't know that Trump is going to be willing to risk, again, destroying the U.S.'s credibility globally. Obviously, he wanted this deal to go through because he's meeting with the G7 countries today in France. I think he wants to have peace on the table, at least the illusion of peace. He doesn't want to see our so-called greatest ally bombing inside Lebanon after Trump has told them repeatedly to stop. So this begs the question, is this a real working relationship? If you're working with somebody, right, and you're so-called allies, and one side says, listen, this is destroying something we're working towards. This is destroying a peace proposal. As best I can make it, this is what we're trying to do, then this is what we like. And that person says, oh, yeah, sure. And then they continue on doing what the other side is saying they don't want you to do. That's not certainly not a reciprocal relationship, folks. That's one side saying, you do what we say, we do what we want. That's the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump. Because again, if Netanyahu cared or really listened to Trump, he wouldn't be doing exactly what he's doing right now. That's the truth of the matter. And so we've got to be, again, looking at what's happening. If the cessation of the fighting in Lebanon is the first thing on that table with the Iranians that Trump has allegedly signed off on electronically already, prior to this meeting in Geneva this Friday, for the official signing, he's got to find a way to, he's got to be the one that reins in Netanyahu. That's the way it's got to work. And will that happen? Only time will tell. But look at Netanyahu's track record. Never honored a ceasefire he's ever agreed to. Never honored it. He's supposed to be in a ceasefire right now with the Lebanese. That's not happening. He's supposed to be in a ceasefire in Gaza right now. We still have over 900 people killed since that so-called ceasefire at the end of last year. Over 900 that we know of. And by the way, that death toll is going up quite significantly. I believe it's over 100,000 people that have been killed right now. And by the way, Hamas is no weaker. But Gaza does lie in ruin. I'll let you all ponder that. Let me go and play you a clip, though. You have as I told you before, you have the war hawks, the people that champion this conflict that are not happy with this deal coming out the way it is. And they've been hearing things like I've been sharing with you about some of the provisions that may be in the bill. Again, it's up in the air right now. We don't know if it's all true or not. We don't know if it's going to be all 14 points. Maybe it's half of the points. Maybe there's some variation of each and every one of these things. But they're not happy about it. They're very scared about this because they like war. They like war. They get rich off war. And they do what they're told, especially people like General Keane. Take a listen to clip 1.
I can't square some of the things that are coming out of the administration from reliable sources. That's what I find so disturbing. When I heard it from the Iranians, I dismissed it. I said, oh, that's the same nonsense we were always hearing. But when I hear from administration sources some of the things that you have heard of what's in this deal, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's not defensible. I think what the president should do is just let's release it and let people see what's out there so we stop debating about something none of us has seen.
That would be good. Again, I'm not opposed to that. Let's get this out there. Let's get it open. Let's see what we're actually negotiating. But Trump wants to end the war because he sees the global ramifications of the economy, the chaos this has caused, and it's all his fault. Netanyahu told him they were going in, and Trump says, we'll be there right behind you. How can anyone look at this and say this is good? This is fantastic. This was worth the while. This is worth the probably, and again, I have to only estimate, if the war cost us $1 to $2 billion per day, at least, and we've been in this war for now over 105 days, ladies and gentlemen, I'd have to determine, okay, we probably have spent somewhere in the $100 billion range just for the war itself. Then you have to look at the bases that have been destroyed all throughout the Gulf Arab states, our allies in the region. That's over $100 billion. So we destroyed, we've ruined, we've wasted over $200 billion of our own taxpayer dollars on a war that we did not win, where we did not receive any type of regime change. And now we're sitting here trying to negotiate on their terms because they've won this conflict. We did not defeat the Iranians. And I'm not saying that to be happy about that to you. That's just the reality of the situation we're in. We have not beaten the Iranians militarily. We couldn't even militarily open up the Strait of Hormuz. But Trump wants the Strait open. He understands that, again, the ramifications of that. When you have 31% of the global oil supply no longer in circulation, the 25% of the liquefied natural gas, the 44% of helium, the 35% of the urea, the nitrogen needed for the global fertilizer supply that we're not getting right here in the United States, you have to sit back and ask yourself the question, why are we going on with this? Why are we putting on this charade that we're winning this conflict? Because we're not. Now, J.D. Vance can get on any news network and tell you, well, the U.S., we're holding all the cards. Okay, J.D. You have fun trying to negotiate that. He's so-called the architect of this negotiation. But again, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing this. And again, Netanyahu's going to receive lots of pressure domestically about all this. They're obviously not happy with the way he's been handling this. But make no mistake, Netanyahu sold this to Trump. He went in first. He killed the Ayatollah. He killed the Ayatollah's family. His wife, his daughter-in-law, his granddaughter. Several officials in the government as well that were in his compound. All died in this. And do we think the Iranians are going to bend over backwards when they've defeated us? Again, it's an exercise in futility, folks, to get these people to understand this. They're not going to capitulate. They're simply just not going to do that. So when I read this list, I say, well, again, if I were winning a conflict and these are the provisions I wanted, the relief of sanctions, the controlling of the Strait of Hormuz, again, to their so-called arrangements, which I do believe they will keep a toll system, probably after this 30 days of opening it during the negotiations, lifting on the naval blockade, all these things. These are all Iranian issues. They benefit the U.S. really not at all. The only thing that they would get is if we do this, then we get talks of the nuclear weapons program with the Iranians. That's the only benefit to all of this. Anything else in here is just simply not for the U.S. We simply don't want it. Now, I do want to read this to you as well. This came out of the AP. It says here, Iran's top diplomat said Tuesday that the tentative deal to end the war with the United States would require Israel to withdraw from Lebanon. So we're getting that actual confirmation. And by the way, that was number one on my list that I gave to you, that's going to be one of the provisions. Now, this is a condition that Israel has already rejected wholeheartedly, and that could really sink this agreement. So this deal, again, it's not fully made public, but we're getting remnants from some of the top officials. So again, Trump is saying Iran can't have a nuclear bomb. Okay, that's going to be on the provision. That was what I read to you yesterday. That's going to be on the table with the United States. And in the past, with Obama and with the signing of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, with the fatwas they've had in Iran, I don't doubt that they would sign that if they get what they want from us. You even have Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi coming out saying that Israel's continued occupation of southern Lebanon would violate the deal. So if you're Netanyahu and you really want this war to go on, You would just find a way to defy it, and you would continue to do what you're doing. You'd say, we've got to take Hezbollah, we've got to do it for our national security, even though it was us that invaded Lebanon first. Okay, we'll sell it as self-defense, we'll kill some more people, it's okay. We'll tell, the 1 million people that we have since displaced from their homes, I'll say to you, telling them never to return, and that's okay. Right? We're going to take everything south of the Litani River because we want the water supply, and we want the real estate too. Does this sound like self-defense to you folks? Of course it doesn't, but that's what's being sold to you each and every day, unfortunately. So I think Lebanon is going to be one of the major issues, and I think, I do believe that Gaza will be on there too, and the trying to reel in of Hamas as well. For the Israelis. They'll try to get Trump to go ahead and do that. But I don't see them, again, moving away from their proxies. I don't think, for instance, Iran is going to say, have fun, Hezbollah, have fun, Hamas, just go on your own way now. We've got to deal with the United States. Probably is not going to happen that way. Only time will tell, folks. Again, I don't have a crystal ball I can, look into and tell you what's going to happen, but we have to look at how people have acted. Netanyahu has never honored a ceasefire, and I doubt he will honor it this time, especially if he's upset about what's going on here, and his country is now very much upset about Trump so-called betraying them. That's what you're getting from the press, at least, coming on. Certainly on these social media apps as well, you're seeing a lot of this taking place as this goes on. This decision was stated. So Lebanon's going to be up front and center, folks, and we'll see what Trump says about this. And I think that's why Trump is kind of honing in on this right now. And let me play you really quickly, though, Trump on this deal really quick. Before we move on to other issues regarding this, let me play you Trump and what his position has been on this from the start, by the way. And this is what he said just yesterday. Take a listen.
But I'll not only release it, I'll probably have a press conference and read it to you word by word so that the press covers it accurately, because it's a very important document. And unlike Obama, who could have destroyed the Middle East with a horrible JCPOA, it is the worst agreement. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a wall against a nuclear weapon. I mean, I see these people say, but we already had one. That was the words. He paid a fortune for it. We paid nothing.
So he is trying to sell you now. The JCPOA was this terrible deal. We've got to do something about it. So he exits it. By the way, we're told that Miriam Ellison had to kind of coax him into doing that. Okay, so the Israelis don't want to be in this agreement. Why? Because that creates peace. They don't want that. So Trump gets out of it. He replaces it with nothing. Now we're upset that the Iranians may have access to a nuclear weapon, which, again, none of our intelligence shows. Never forget that. But now we've got people inside of Congress now, Senate Republicans now, say they want to say in this Trump-Iran deal. This comes out of Politico. And sure enough, one of the people that's fomenting at the mouth, just foaming, all this hatred, this vitriol about this, is none other than Senate Budget Committee Chair Lady Lindsey Graham Cracker. Oh, yeah. Look at this. Speaking with reporters, look at this jerk. I can't stand him. Every time he talks, I get upset. Every time he talks, I can't take it. Coming out and talking about how we shouldn't be doing this. He says the memorandum of understanding being described by us sounds really very good. The memorandum of understanding is being described by Iran sounds awful. So what he's saying to you is that what we're selling to you, oh no, we're not going to give them any money, it's not going to be like that. You've heard this. But if the Iranians are going to get what they want, and by the way, why wouldn't they? They've won this conflict. Now we've got the Senate Republicans who punted on this, on the War Powers Resolution and the War Powers Act, saying Trump can do what he wants. That's fine. We don't even need to do anything. We'll give it right to him. We'll give him this war. We want to have a vote after the 60 days to see where we are, if we're going to vote to go to war, if we're going to bring our troops back home. We'll let Trump handle it as is. Now that they're getting what they don't want, and by the way, most of these people are bought and paid for by AIPAC, the Israel lobby, and what have you. Now they want to get involved because then they can kind of stop this. They can say we're not going to have this treaty with the United States and Iran. We don't want this. So there's other ways to block all this. And I think that's why the Iranians, and by the way, never underestimate the Iranians' intelligence too, by the way. That's why they said we were going to take this to the UN UN Security Council. They want a resolution in the UN. So that would circumvent, of course, the U.S. Senate in terms of a treaty. But you're going to see people, again, looking at the list here of the neocons, the war hawks, if you will, Lindsey Graham, James Lankford of Oklahoma. We've got to have a vote of Congress to be able to solidify it long term. Oh, really? Where were you to voted on this in the beginning? Genius, huh? You guys were so fine with it not doing anything at all. Now all of a sudden they want to do something with this. So you're going to have pushback from the Senate Republicans who are bought and paid for. I saw something with Ted Cruz. I'm not going to play it for you. It's disgusting. But they will do anything for the Israel lobby. That's just the way it's going to be. And I wish I could tell you otherwise. They'd be America first. Simply not going to happen. Simply not going to happen. All right, let's move on, folks, to another topic. Let's move on because, again, there's so many other great topics we're going to discuss today. So we'll keep an eye on what's taking place with this deal, if Israel trashes it for us, and if any new revelations come from what's actually in the bill itself. Or it should be the Memorandum of Understanding. All right, let's look at this. This comes out of France now. Trump is now in the G7 summit now. It's taking place yesterday, today, and tomorrow, of course. And I told you before, he wanted to have this Memorandum of Understanding going into this so he can tout it to the European leaders, right? He wants to look good, where he's been sharply criticized by many of these European states. And his managing of the conflict, of course, and we look at the surge in global energy prices. It's obviously hitting Europe. And Trump wanted to go in there with a win. This is exactly what I did. By the way, he got some praise from people like Macaroni, good old Emmanuel Macaroni. Gotta love that guy, right? Real genius he is. Look at this. He says, I think a lot of the great things are going to happen in the Middle East right now. And very importantly, the oil price is plummeting down and the stock market is shooting up like a rocket today. Oh yeah, what a genius this guy is. Thank God they steal elections in France. What will this guy do with this time? One only knows. He then says, the Iran deal that we made is going to bring a lot of success to the world. There you go. There you go. Yep. But yeah, you had people like Macaroni there. You had Keir Starmer, Sir Keir, who's about as popular as Lindsey Graham in America, which is not popular. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Oh, good old Merz. He's doing a great job in Germany, right? And we have Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, all really upset about this war taking place. They didn't back Trump. Trump bashed them back and forth. But they're happy, though, that he's looking for peace. And I think that's the main takeaway from this. People don't want to see this war go on. They want to see an end of this war, but they don't want to see Iran doing whatever it wants to do. So again, they would likely align with Trump on this, not Netanyahu. So some of the big takeaways in France, again, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, again, talking about economical terms that's being discussed. Financial incentives for Iran. So the Memorandum of Understanding allegedly includes conditions where Iran could receive financial benefits if it meets certain benchmarks. That's what they're saying, at least. We're looking at things like the energy market impact. So they're talking about discussions, also exploring alternative supply routes for oil and gas to reduce dependence on the Strait of Hormuz. Again, that's all possible. You can look at things like, again, for instance, the Caspian Sea. You can look at land routes going across Saudi Arabia and what have you. Saudi Arabia into Turkey, into Eastern Europe, into Western Europe, Northern Europe, wherever you want to go. You take your pick. Again, the Iranians were doing the exact same thing. They were looking at different means of routes, different Silk Roads. So they didn't have to rely on trying to get around the U.S. naval blockade, which, by the way, many ships did, despite what you hear from people like Pete Hegseth. But they used the Caspian Sea, they used the Belt and Road Initiative, they used different routes going into Pakistan, again, to get their cargo to where it needed to go. So now Europe is thinking, okay, so how can we do this differently? How can we get away from, for instance, if the Bab el-Mandeb Strait controlled by Yemen is shut down, or the Suez Canal is shut down. How do we get around this? Do we build landlines now? Do we build pipelines going through these countries to get it to a reasonable spot where we can use it and have access to it at all times? Now, the only risk you run into, of course, is that those pipelines, those routes can be destroyed, if you will. And we saw the Israelis actually bombing one of the Silk Roads going to China that they had to obviously fix just recently in this war. So they're talking about all these things, and again, people are understanding that the Strait of Hormuz is a very critical choke point for a lot of the world's supply for, again, the oil, the petroleum, the liquefied natural gas, the helium, the aluminum, the nitrogen, the urea, all these different things that come out of this region that are very crucial for the world economy. They don't want to see this happen again. And by the way, it would have never happened had Trump not gone in with Israel and bombed them. So these are all things that will be discussed with the G7 summit today, so we'll see what Trump comes out, if there's any new deals that come out. But one of the other big things that came out was President Trump now being forced into focus more on Ukraine now, even though we haven't even solved Iran, but focusing on Ukraine. It's amazing. I mean, again, this war should be over already. There's talks that Putin is now looking into a new onslaught of initiatives to go in and hopefully take over and what have you. But French President Macron now announced at the summit that decisions about Ukraine a priority ahead of talks about technology and global economics. So they're all hyper-focused on what takes place in Ukraine. Now, they invited Zelensky as a special guest to talk directly to Trump to make his case. So, again, Zelensky should be irrelevant. Zelensky shouldn't even be president right now. There should already be elections, which, by the way, he declared martial law. And, by the way, they haven't had the elections. The Ukrainian people need new leadership. That's what it means. We shouldn't have Zelensky in office right now. He is holding things up. Now, Zelensky has come out and said recently he wants to speak to Putin. I don't think Putin even would speak with him. He knows they tried to assassinate him. He understands this. I told you before, this is going to be won on the battlefield. So Putin needs to stop dragging his feet, and let's get this war finished. That's really the end. This is what ends this conflict. Taking over Kiev, not bombing it, of course, into submission, of course, but taking the city, crossing the Dnieper River, controlling it, saying, we have won, get out of the way, have your elections, let's move on. And by the way, we're going to be taking these 4 oblasts in the process because we've won this. These are where ethnic-speaking Russians live, and we'll take this land. Now, on Tuesday, signs emerged that Zelensky's message was getting through. Again, I don't know what he expects Trump to do. Because I think, like the Iranians, Putin does not trust President Trump. I don't believe it. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, speaking alongside Zelensky, said the U.S. would join the G7 allies in providing Ukraine with more air defense capability. That is so... If Trump does that, then Putin understands that this is a war with Europe, which he's believed all along. This is why he wants those buffer zones to be in place. That's why he didn't want Ukraine to join NATO. It all makes sense. Trump also indicated that he would enforce existing U.S. sanctions on Russia by ending waivers that have allowed Moscow to continue selling oil, a temporary exemption that Trump said was needed to support the global energy supplies. So, like we made Iran rich recently, we've also made Russia very, very rich. Trump told reporters, the oil is now flowing. Again, that's not true. It's flowing pending you get these refineries opened up, and of course the Strait opened up this Friday. That's when you'd see it. By the way, only, I think, one ship crossed through the Strait yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And so they've got to understand something here. This ends on the battlefield, so if you're going to put more arms to Zelensky, give him air defense missiles, and all this other nonsense to just keep this war going on, then the real loser here is the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians are fighting. They're dying in much bigger numbers. I'm told 30-1 is the actual real ratio. For every 30 dead Ukrainians, you have 1 dead Russian soldier. We should not want this. Ukraine is not going to win this. There's no way, despite what you hear from the Keith Kellogg's, the General Keens. Oh, I can't believe they're still holding them back. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, what are they holding them back with? What land are they taking back? How many casualties have they had? How many dead do they have? How many people are fleeing Ukraine right now? It's a complete mess. End the conflict, end the war right now. And by the way, Zelensky has the ability to do so, but the oligarchs in the country will not allow. That's why you're seeing a lot of that. So if we were to go ahead and do this, to give them the air defense weaponry, if Trump does that at a time where we need to bolster up our military, it would just be simply foolish. And again, I won't even know what to say about that. That's how stupid that would be. And Trump has turned his back on the Ukraine war pretty much to focus on Iran. So we'll see what exactly takes place with that. Again, if he does that, it's completely unbelievable if he does. Let's pray to God he does it. And the EU countries as well. Trump should definitely speak to them about not doing that. I want to move on to something else very important. Let's keep it in the domestic realm now here in the United States. Now let's take a look at this. This comes out of Washington Times. It says Senator Bernie Sanders is steadily making good on his long-running mission to pull the Democratic Party further to the left. Well, no kidding. The 84-year-old moron from Vermont, the so-called independent, when he's in reality a communist, of course, a communist that has not done anything for anybody else, would make himself more wealthy. That's another truism. But lately he has blessed a slate of far-left candidates who have racked up primary wins by channeling a Sanders-style populist message aimed at voters who feel the very wealthy and politically powerful have rigged the system against them. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to stop for just a second. Bernie Sanders is rich. He is wealthy. He has done nothing in Congress that helps anybody else but himself. Why do you think he ran for president twice? You know how much money he racked up with that? Well, go read Profiles in Corruption by Peter Schweitzer. You're going to see how corrupt Bernie Sanders is. Can anyone point to me a bill Bernie Sanders has written himself or supported that has made anyone's life better? Now you're thinking to yourself, geez, I can't think of a thing. Of course not, because he never has. And by the way, seldom does Congress ever do anything like that. That makes any real change in our lives, unfortunately. But here he goes. He says, people understand that the system is broken. It is rigged. It is corrupt. They want change. Well, no kidding, Bernie. No kidding. So wait a minute. You've been elected time and time again by a corrupt system? And what have you done to fight this corrupt system? Where's the corruption in the system? Now, we know there's corruption in voting. Absolutely, 100%. But where's the corruption inside the actual Congress, though? Is it the people that are bought and paid for by the AIPAC lobby? Could it be that, Bernie? Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably part of it. By the way, both sides bought and paid for completely. But then he goes on to say, I am happy to say we are having some real success. Oh yeah, real success. We are winning primaries all over the country, and I think we are going to win more in the near future. My name is Bernie Sanders. I have done nothing but make myself wealthy, but I make you all believe that I'm going to work for you, even though things are getting progressively worse. That's Bernie Sanders. Now he's backing this Graham Plattner guy, the guy with a so-called Nazi tattoo on his chest. This guy's a mess, completely. Bernie Sanders backs this guy. That's bringing the country to a much better place, folks, don't you? Yeah. So we'll see if Susan Collins can stave him off and actually win this, and probably one of the more focused on Senate races of the midterms right now. But Bernie Sanders is a guy who is pushing the party further to the left. They're selling you communism because, again, this is who Bernie Sanders is. He is a communist through and through. A while back I was watching when he was first nominated. I think it was 2016. And they were going through the delegation votes. Of course, Hillary ended up winning that. There's some discrepancy if she actually won it or if they won it for her. Only, we don't know. One can only speculate, of course. But I thought it was interesting when he was having the superdelegates, cast their votes for him. His dunce brother gets up, and one of the first things he says, our parents loved FDR. They loved FDR so much. They loved FDR. And FDR, a fascist, socialist, communist, that's what he was. They love the New Deal. That's what he ends up saying. Well, the New Deal is more government, folks. The New Deal was not necessary. The New Deal didn't get us out of the Great Depression. The war did. And again, we joined in 1941. So was the war. It wasn't the New Deal programs that were good. You didn't get a New Deal. You got communism. That's how the people were duped back then. I don't understand how they can allow that to happen to themselves, but that's the truth of the matter. That's who Bernie Sanders is. More government, more restrictions on business, controlling everything. This focal point on what takes place in D.C. needs to be involved in every aspect of your life. That's who Bernie Sanders is. So he wants more government, not less government. He wants more intrusion on your civil liberties, on your life. This is who the guy is. And, of course, taxing people into oblivion, of course. I mean, hell, Bernie Sanders would have you pay 100% of your income and then some, if he could. But look at who he's the people he's backing. He's talking about a California 22nd Congressional District where Randy Vijas, a school board trustee and auto shop owner, outperformed Assemblywoman Jasmeet Baines. Oh, look at this. What does this guy do? Good Lord. To finish second in the top two, he'll face Republican David Valadao, who should hopefully win that. Mr. Villegas, the son of Mexican immigrants, leaned heavily into the working class background in a district that is roughly 70% Hispanic. Okay, all right. In California, the Central Valley, okay. Talking about growing up on Medicaid and free school lunches. Okay, Bernie. I mean, again, stupid position. In California, everyone gets free school lunches. It's so easy to apply for it, too, by the way. I know people whose parents drove Rolls Royces in California. When I was teaching in L.A., they got free school lunches to them. It's so stupid. But they sell you this person's broke, they did nothing, and now look at them running for office. So what has Bernie Sanders done besides run for office and win time and time again? Who can point to something he's done that's made the country a better place, that's made it a freer place, that's made it a more affordable place? Can you do that? You can't. Because I've looked and I can't find a damn thing. But he's made himself wealthy in the process, too. All while destroying a generation of people who think that, again, government will take care of you. That's not government's job, folks. Our founding decided that we had the self-autonomy to govern ourselves. We don't need government just down our backs, in our checkbooks, in our school system, in all these aspects of our lives. You're supposed to govern yourself. But people today, because, again, we can look at things like inflation and, of course, the devaluing of the currency. You can look at, again, the supply and demand that we have in this country because we've let in what? How many millions of illegals in this country right now that are still here right now? How many visa holders that have expired that are still here right now? Greg Bavino of Department of Homeland Security says it's about 100 million people. And I tend to agree with him when you look at the real numbers. The Biden administration opened up the floodgates. What did Bernie Sanders have to say about that? Not a damn thing. He loves it. That's how he helps get his people elected again. So, you read the stories about these people. Oh, this, the son of a shop owner. Oh, this guy runs the... Again, these people are all cut from the same cloth. They're all communists through and through. Otherwise, Bernie wouldn't support him. And now he sees that in the, airhead of Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and of course her ilk, who are dumber than a second coat of paint, to take that mantle when Bernie vacates the U.S. Senate. Okay, this is who these people are. This is what they're going to run on. But again, what have they done? What have they done? Any of them? AOC, Ilhan Omar. Any of the other ones that I try to forget who these people are. I try to burn them out of my memory. What have they done for us? What has she done? What has AOC done to make people in New York City wealthier? What has she done? Sell Eat the Rich dresses for herself at a nice premium price? Name something she's done. You can't do it. And by the way, also under scrutiny right now, too, I want to move on. We can only talk about Bernie Sanders for so much, folks. I get angry. I get irritated. He is such a shyster, I can't even believe it. Anyways, this comes from Newsweek. California Governor Gavin Newsom, another crook himself, who destroyed California, by the way. Never forget that. But now he's facing a whole new level of scrutiny right now, being placed under the spotlight on how many millions of dollars have flowed into a nonprofit run by his wife, Jennifer Seibel Newsom. Why can't you just pick a name? Jennifer Newsom. Why do we need the maiden name in there, too? Why do these women need to do this? Pick a name, for God's sakes. That's unbelievable. Anyways. But now we've got federal investigators now examining the financial relationships linked to both the Newsom family and this associated organizations, including the California Partners Project, as part of a broader probe into finances and tax-related matters. This is amazing. Now, I will tell you there's no allegation of any wrongdoing yet against Newsom's wife or the California Partners Project. The overlap between political power, donor networks, and the charitable funding has become a focal point as the federal inquiries continue on. Now, authorities have not publicly set out any specific allegations, and Newsom has rejected this probe as being politically motivated, even though his state is wrought with fraud going on all the time. I mean, again, look at the homeless fraud. Look at the game he's played with that scheme. $24 billion? And yet it's gotten worse? So clearly, folks, the money's going in the wrong direction. I mean, we can all agree on that. Then you look at the fraud coming from things like the hospice program in Los Angeles. I mean, again, it's ridiculous through and through. But he says it's because he's running for president, or considering, running for president, even though we know he desperately wants to do so. He's using us as leverage. Say, look, they're coming after me. I'm this innocent guy. I've done so great for California. Yeah, sure. You don't think Gavin Newsom's taking money? By the way, how did he buy a $9.1 million house in Northern California? How did he get the money to do that? He's been on the board of stupid advisors put on by Willie Brown, 97, if I'm not mistaken. Always won his re-elections, becomes mayor, 2004 to 2011, I believe. Comes lieutenant governor, then becomes governor. You know, all this is set in place for him, of course. Now, the powers that be. And yet somehow he buys a $9.1 million. Now, I'm sure his family had some money. I don't doubt that. But this guy supposedly makes about, I think it's $190-ish thousand, unless they've upped his pay for some reason. I don't know why you would, but that could be it. But how do you live on $200,000 in California? Now, I know he lives in the governor's mansion. Okay, great. Good for him. And we know he's got a restaurant in San Fran Schmucko. Okay. How many people that are restaurant owners, small restaurant owners, in San Fran Schmucko do you know that have a $9.1 million house? Or the Plumpjack Winery that was set up by the Getty family that gave him money, that have been his major benefactors? Has any money flown into these accounts by the Getty family, who have been his major benefactor? Or these other NGOs or people that want something from Gavin Newsom? And I say this to you not to say that he's guilty of anything just yet. Don't get me wrong. But we see this with the other wives. Bernie Sanders' wife. When he was running media buys, if you will, when he was running for president, what they do is media buys. So in other words, the Bernie Sanders campaign foundation, what they do is they purchase a certain amount of media buys. And the organization that sets that up, that works with them, gets a cut of that money back. Well, Bernie Sanders, as stupid and useless as he is, got his wife's friends to run this media buy organization for him, and they probably kicked anywhere between $13 to $15 million back of those media buys. It's amazing, folks. Now, I'm sure they all had a nice little cut of that. But never underestimate, because, again, especially in the federal government, all his wife had to do was say she earns over $1,000 a year. That's what they know about her. So they don't look into anything else with these people. So these two friends of the Sanders run the media buys. They're getting this big chunk of money back that were put out when he was running for president twice. Oh, yeah, folks, it's a racket, all right. It's a racket to a T. So again, if Newsom hasn't done anything wrong, okay, let's take a look at it. Of course, if there's obviously something rotting in Denmark, we should be looking at it. Okay, now again, if the Trump administration is simply eyeing this because it's Newsom's wife, okay, I don't approve of that. I think there should be at least some scrutiny, though, if there is some issuance of wrongdoing. If there's something that doesn't make sense there. So in other words, where's this millions of dollars coming from? Where's the money going? I have no problem looking at a lot of these things because, again, we know the money usually goes in the wrong direction. Again, look at the hospice fraud. Look at the learning education fraud. Look at the homeless fraud in California. All these things. The rot in California runs deep, just like it runs deep in Minnesota, just like it would in Washington and Oregon and all over the country, Illinois, New York. It's all the same thing, folks. All the same thing. Just gets labeled to you in a different way. Oh, by the way, I do want to go over this article too. This comes from Paul Craig Roberts. Brilliant article. And I want to read this to you. This is a great article he published today. He says, why haven't tort attorneys gone after the COVID vaccine makers? Now, a tort action is really just something of a civil lawsuit brought out by someone who has suffered harm or loss due to someone else's, I guess we'll call it misconduct or wrongful conduct, and they're seeking compensation after these remedies were given to them. So when we look at the VAERS, right, the Vaccine Adverse Effects Survey, I believe is what it's called, why are we not looking at compensation from these pharmaceutical companies who sold this off as safe and effective? Well, it wasn't just them saying it was safe and effective. It was Dr. Anthony Fauci. You all remember that, right? Fauci came up. He sold it on TV, safe and effective, 95% effective. You know, you don't have to wear your mask anymore. Everything's safe and effective. It's a 95% chance you won't get COVID ever again. Okay, you'll be safe and effective, but still wear your mask for a little while longer. That was Fauci. That was the dunce, the pill pusher, the guy who botched every single pandemic since he became head of the allergies and infectious diseases of the NIH. But anyways, here was Fauci selling you a bill of goods that was all wrong.
The process of the speed did not compromise at all safety, nor did it compromise scientific integrity. It was a reflection of the extraordinary scientific advances in these types of vaccines, which allowed us to do things in months that actually took years before.
Yeah, the reason it took place, moron, years, because they had to do the proper safety testing. When you put this out as an emergency authorization, what they were able to do was circumvent all the safety testing. So you don't have to go through those channels. So there was no long-term safety testing done with this at all. Now, it's puzzling with such an enormous amount of evidence available that lawyers have really not gone after these class action lawsuits against these COVID manufacturers. Pfizer, BioNTech, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, which Bill Gates has some money invested in, by the way. Yeah, the rot runs deep, folks. But the evidence would make you seem to be conclusive because, again, the defense would really include much of, if not all, of the governments of the world. Their presidents, the prime ministers, the medical officers, the medical associations, everyone who enabled the mass COVID vaccination. Of course, in addition to Big Pharma and, of course, Fauci in the United States. Fauci getting up and doing just what I just played for you. Everything's safe and effective. Hey, everything's great. This brand new technology that makes your body produce the spike proteins on their own. Yeah, that's Frankensteinish, folks, if you will. I need to rid your body of these toxins. I'll just say that to you. Now, the settlements could reach $1 trillion, perhaps more, I would have to say. There's so many people. By the way, there was 2.6 million people on the VAERS report just the last time I checked, a couple of months ago, I think, at the bare minimum. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people within 5 years of taking the shot on the VAERS list. Myocarditis, pericarditis, heart attack, stroke, you name it. Sterility, miscarriage, all these things, folks, are on this list. And we don't have any answers for this. Now, it could be because the governments play ball. We know, for example, I'll try to fast forward through this a little bit because we're short on time. But it seems Big Pharma is too powerful to be seriously attacked. So in other words, inside the United States, even Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had to accept the CDC's award of $1.24 billion to Pfizer for the COVID vaccine to be given to children and adults. You can look at that on the Children's Health Defense.org website. So the CDC, this federal agency that reports to RFK Jr., again, despite all the conclusive evidence that the COVID vaccines are extremely risky for children and adults too, by the way, but especially for children, has nevertheless funded and approved their continuation. Why? Last year, he was supposed to go over the efficacy of vaccinations, the safety testing, because many of these new vaccines don't go through the safety testing process anymore. But it really shows you who's in control. It's not even RFK Jr. anymore that can protect us from Big Pharma. And that's, again, very, very troubling. So apparently, Big Pharma has more control over the CDC than RFK Jr. does, who runs the Health and Human Services. So this should really tell us everything that we need to know about this, again, at the bare minimum. But this is very problematic and troubling. If the government is forcing you to take a shot against your own will, and you get sick because of it, whose fault is that? And by the way, where's the new safety testing in this? I would love to see it. We don't have any of it, unfortunately, folks, because it doesn't exist. So we're looking at being ruled by powerful economic interests over our own safety to be secure in our persons. Folks, thank you again for being here as always. I wish I could continue, but we're out of time for today's program. Make sure you're staying prepped as always. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Jure Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, God bless.